As an academy owner, you work hard to build trust with your students, their parents, and your community. But trust isn't something you claim, it's something you prove and earn. That's where Academy Safe comes in. We help academies like yours stand out with verified safety standards. Background checks for all staff, U.S. Center for Safe Sports certification, concussion training, defibrillators on site, CPR, first aid and AED certification, security cameras, rank and lineage checks, and verification of business insurance. Join the trusted martial arts registry that's redefining safety throughout North America. Lead by example. Show parents you're accredited with Academy Safe.
Hello, and welcome to My Empty Hands, a podcast about the martial arts, typically focused on Kempo, but we give love to all the martial arts around here. I am your host, Reggie Darden, and I have another wonderful guest that I'll be speaking with today, and I'm probably going to butcher this as I usually do, but we have Brett Correia?
Correia. No.
I know we just went over this, but I always get nervous when I start recording and I butcher it. But so yeah, we are going to talk to him about his journey in the martial arts and whatever other rat holes that we get onto. We'll get into that as well. I usually start things off by just giving a little bit of my background. So I currently train in multiple martial arts at this point: American Kempo, Hapkido, Capoeira, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Muay Thai. I also have some experience doing some boxing and some experience in Taekwondo. So I stay, as I like to say, I stay busy, but I have fun doing the podcast and getting to meet and talk to people. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to our guest here and go ahead and tell us how did the martial arts find you? How did Kempo find you? Where did it all begin? And we'll just kind of go from there. Okay, so with once again with my seamless editing, no one will know anything happened. But we had a little technical difficulties, but we're back here. So I just kind of went through my little spiel that my listeners have heard a million times. So we're going to go ahead and turn things over to our guest here. Where did Kempo find you? Where did the martial arts find you? Where did it all begin? And we'll go from there.
Oh, Reggie, I grew up in two orphanages here in Cape Town, South Africa. I was born here in 1970, and I spent 5 years growing up in one orphanage. Being of Portuguese descent, my family was Catholic, so I was raised by nuns. And I grew up in a place called Nazareth House. I was there from the age of about 16 months till I was 6.5. Then I came home for 2 years, and unfortunately, I was then placed in another Catholic home called St. Michael's from the age of 8 till I was 18. But in 1979, in my 8th year, going on 9, a gentleman by the name of Brian Allen Vian, Shian Brian Allen Vian, came to the orphanage and offered Kempo karate. And as I'm sure you can well appreciate, you know our country's history. Pre-94, we had an apartheid regime here. But growing up in an orphanage, even though you may have been white, you were treated no better than anybody else, And it was a very unique situation for a man of color to be training white kids because in those days everything was segregated, as you know. And he was my instructor in 1979 in the apartheid era. So that in itself, historically, was very unique, And I was, he was my instructor from 1979 to 1997, 18 years. And he was the founder and the father of karate in South Africa. He brought the art to South Africa. And, he was training me along with other kids. And in the orphanage, the older boys used to bully us. There were always fights. It's like a pecking order. And the kids came from broken homes, some orphaned, some just broken families, drugs, alcohol, etc. So you can imagine the mix you had. We were 140 odd boys and girls in this orphanage. And I had about 18 boys in my personal hostel. And I was 8. The ages ranged from 6 to 18. So I was right at the bottom when I came into the orphanage. And, these boys, the older boys, were always beating on us and so forth. And then I started karate with Shian Brian Vian. By the age of about 14, I'm quite a big guy. I'm 1.91 meters tall. That's about 6'3". And I've always weighed over 100 kilos, which is 220 pounds. I've been heavier than that before. I've actually lost about 20 odd pounds in the last 6 months. But I kind of weigh about 110 kilos, which is about 220 odd pounds. So I'm not a small guy. And so growing up, I was always quite tall for my age, genetically bigger than most boys my age. But from the age of about 14, I was able to hold myself with literally anybody in the orphanage. And the older boys, the 18-year-old boys, they started picking on me less and less. As my Kempo developed, so the challenges and the attacks decreased as well. By the age of 14, I think like almost nobody picked a fight with me. Well, not as often anyway. And that's all thanks to Shian Brian Vian and Kempo. To coin a phrase, it saved my ass.
Oh yeah, indeed. There's a couple things I wanted to know, and so with your teacher, what kind of what lineage, Kempo lineage, was he a part of? Or?
He was a bit of a mix. He was teaching us Ed Parker's Kempo. He was also teaching us Korean Kempo. So there was a little bit of a mix and match. We were not definitive in one school or one lineage, but it was all Kempo. In 1995, a few years before his death, he affiliated to Chuck Sullivan and Vic LaRue in the States, the International Karate Connection Association, and that's when they first really introduced their online or their curriculum to the international world. And since Brian affiliated to them, so we started doing the Chinese connection, the karate connection stuff in like 95. But then tragically in 1997, Shian Brian was shot by one of our students, a 17-year-old student. I don't want to get into that, but some say it was accidental and so forth. It did involve a firearm, obviously, and he had his own security company, and he was shot in the stomach and he passed away. And I'd been with him at that point 18 years. I was a third-degree black belt at that stage after 18 years. But more than my instructor, he was like my father. He was my father figure, because being in the orphanage and not having a conventional family structure, not seeing my parents very often, seeing him consistently, and he wasn't only imparting Kempo knowledge with me, he was teaching me life skills and personal development and so forth, taking us camping, fishing, hiking in the mountains. So he was essentially my father,
Oh yeah, no, that's my deepest condolences on his passing. I could totally understand and see. Yeah, just kind of like you said, he was essentially your father, and definitely filling in that father figure role that was definitely needed. So kind of the other part of it that I was curious about. So with the segregation part of it, I mean, was there? I would assume that there was kind of the threat that this, the teaching would have to stop it at any point, or threat of violence or anything like that, and kind of how did you navigate that side of it?
It's interesting that you say that, because it actually got to a point where, for security reasons, we actually started training offsite. We went to his school in what we refer to in South Africa as a colored area. It's not a black. In South Africa, we have white, we have black, and in the middle we have what's called colored, which is the indigenous people of the Western Cape, which is the tip of Africa, what we call Khoisan, which is like Bushmen, and they integrated with the Dutch that came here in 1652, and then you had this mix of European and traditional local Khoisan people, and then you had this sort of what we call this. In our terminology, Mawasa is also be very careful to use the word colored. In our country, colored is not a derogatory word. It's something that is used widely amongst all race groups. It just describes the difference between white and black. In the rest of the world, you have white and black. Here we have colored. A lot of the Malay and Indian people would be categorized in that sort of category as such, because they don't fall into Caucasian or into the black category. But we trained at Shian Brian's dojo, I think, to make it easier. In those days, sport was segregated, as was everything else. But the Western Cape has always been a very liberal province. We have 9 provinces in our country, and the Western Cape, which is the very tip of Africa, has always been the most liberal. It's the most cosmopolitan. And I've had friends of color right through the 70s, 80s, 90s, right through. I mean, in fact, Sensei Ridor Williams and Shian Jamil Rousseau are both instructors of color. The two of them affiliated with me to the IKKS in December, and we are part of the same organization, and we've known each other for almost 5 decades. We preceded the 94 democracy in South Africa. We've been friends and colleagues and training partners since the 70s, essentially.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, I like hearing when people are being able to stay with the same instructor, stay with the same group, and have that for going on for decades, and not just kind of bouncing around to different schools and different teachers and stuff. Like, you really get to build that bond and that connection, and I think that's really, really important in the martial arts training. We're not just training it by ourselves in a vacuum, but to have that connection and that bond with others, I think is very important in the training. So,
yeah, us being here in South Africa, geographically, we were very isolated from the rest of the world, When Shian Brian died, after 18 years, Shian Kobe, a gentleman called Kobe Jefter, he took over, and Shian Brian's organization was called the Tiger Academy of Martial Arts, TAMA, Tiger Academy of Martial Arts. And Shian Kobe took over the organization in 1997, and he also registered SA Kempo Karate. So he was the successor to Shian Brian, and from 1997 to now, 29 years, he has been the head of Tiger Academy of Martial Arts in South Africa. So we were part of that organization up until last year, and that in itself, if we want to get into that, I can go into that. But there's a reason why after 46 years, we no longer with the organization. I mean, you're probably asking yourself, wow, 5 decades, two organizational heads. Why would you walk? Why would you not be part of that anymore? But unfortunately, Shian Kobe has his family that are when I knew them, they were kids, and they've grown up within his organization, which is fine. It's admirable. Good kids, and they've grown up with him in the organization, but they will take over the organization from him one day. And that progression, there was almost like a natural kind of the older school, being myself, Rido and Jamil, and the younger generation that's come through. They're very much in support of their dad. There isn't as much of an appreciation for Shian Brian. That has been almost faded out in a sense. Yes, they speak of him and so forth, but they're very much like any kid would be. You promote your dad. Your dad is your hero. Your dad is, and for the older guys like us, it's kind of like we've kind of felt like Sensei Brian wasn't being appreciated in the way he should have. But more to the point, I was a third degree in 1997. I traveled to America in 2011. August of 2011, I was invited by Chuck Sullivan and Vic LaRue to attend the Long Beach, it's called the Black Belt Combat Zone event in Long Beach, California. So I flew out from Cape Town to Dubai, from Dubai to LA, and I spent some time there, and I attended the event, and it was such an honor to be there. And when I returned after 2011, I'd been a third degree for 14 years. I never took rank, and I actually wasn't interested. I almost out of loyalty to my original instructor, I stayed on the same belt level. And when I came back from the States, Shian Kobe said, it's time that you move up, you move on, and I was awarded my fourth degree after 14 years. Then in 2021, I was awarded my fifth degree, and Shian Rador was awarded his fourth, and Shian Kobe his fifth. And that was only my second promotion in 29 years. Since 1997 to 2020. So 22 years. And a few years later, 225, Shian Kobe decided to revoke our last promotions. And he had no reason. We hadn't brought the organization into disrepute. In terms of constitution, there was nothing that we had transgressed or anything. We were the three most senior instructors. In fact, we joined the organization before Shian Kobe. So, we were quite taken aback. And then I had meetings with him, and I said, but why? And he came up with all kinds of other criteria that he wanted us to do to be endorsed. And I said, but it doesn't work like that. It's actually an insult to us. If you want to give us criteria for our next promotion, for Rador to fifth, myself to sixth, Jamil to sixth, that's fine. Tell us to climb a mountain backwards if you want to. I don't care what the criteria is, but you cannot award somebody something and 4 years later or 5 years later decide to take it back and then tell them, well, I'm going to give you some other criteria to qualify for this. I said, and I asked around in the martial arts industry within South Africa. I'm very good friends with Sunny Pillay. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's the president of Correia, South Africa. So Sunny knows me 40 odd years. Hussein Naka, who's the Kaicha of Ashihara. I don't know if you know him. He's world renowned. He's written books. He's the head of Ashihara worldwide. And he's also known me for 40 odd years. And I went to people like that, very senior. And I said to them, this is the situation. What should I do? And they said, there's in their organizations, in their style groups, that would never happen unless you did something to bring the organization into disrepute. Or revoking of a rank is a very serious thing. And he did it almost willy-nilly. And the fact that he wasn't prepared to kind of humble himself and stand down and say, look, I awarded these ranks, so I'm going to give you criteria for your next promotion. He was hell-bent on holding us back on that, on taking us back and then giving us criteria. And I said, well, that's where the road ends after 40-odd years. And we were in kind of no man's land. We were not part of Tiger Academy. We were just 3 very senior instructors out in the wilderness. And it was very sad for us. You know, I tried to find a remedy with him. We were at a dead end. And it was in December. I'd been following Manny Reyes for some time, and he reminds me a lot of Shian Brian. They're very, very similar. They're both very volatile. They're very outspoken. Shian Brian was exactly the same. They have very similar genetics. And even Rido and Jamil, they say, wow, you know, Manny reminds us so much of Shian Brian. And I reached out to him and we started chatting. And I told him about our situation in South Africa. So he never solicited me. I approached him. I didn't even approach him to join. We were just dialoguing. And through that dialogue, in exchange, we got to the point where he said, hey, man, if you want a home, you're welcome to join me. I know you're all the way out there, but we can work it out and we can train online and you can become a member of my IKKS. So I was like the first international signing to Manny Reyes, South Africa, in December of 2025. And we joined and, you know, we started engaging, we started doing online techniques and training and so forth. And I just kind of grew from there. I mean, he's got Scotland, UK, Colombia, so many, Congo, some guys from the Congo. I know Cameroon's been reaching out. So I'll be spending time online with the guys in Congo and helping them with their training. So I think it's in 26 states in America, it's in about 20-odd countries, and that's all in a space of 5-6 months. And I found Sensei Brian in Manny. So I have my own personal reasons why I affiliated to him. I know that he's not perfect. Nobody is. I saw in his volatile character, I saw a lot of my old instructor. So it was nothing new to me. And I was prepared to walk with him, journey with him, walk with him. And he took us in. He had the same character as Sensei Brian, Shian Brian. Manny is a very misunderstood person. It's a very misunderstood person. I know he puts out a lot of posts and he's calling out people, and he does do his homework as far as I can see, because I might be in South Africa, but I know who's who out there and a lot of what's gone on. Maybe not as closely as you guys in the States, but I'm quite a fan. And I have built up a very extensive friendship with the guys that I met in the States over the last 15 years. So I have a lot of insights into what's going on there. So I might be here, but I have knowledge. And the only difference is, you know, if I see a flaw, weakness, or a fraudulent activity in somebody, I don't necessarily walk out and police that. I won't go and put a post and say, you're an idiot and your belt's wrong and you're this and that. I rather focus on my own journey and and who I'm teaching at the time and so forth. But we're all different. Just because that's how I'm going to do it doesn't mean Manny's wrong. I might not necessarily agree with how it's been done, but that doesn't make it right or wrong, you know. But Manny does so much good. He does charity work. He he's really opened his heart to the Kempo world out there. A lot of the members have come from, like I said, brokenness, being unfairly treated or so forth. And you guys don't see behind the scenes how he's made, using AI, he's taken photos of our late instructor and he's done beautiful tributes to him and posted all over social media. And that hasn't even been done in my own country. Manny has showed more respect for a man he's never met, but he says he feels him through us, through Ridor, Jamil, and myself. We've done a lot of videos here doing techniques and training, and we've sent it over to him on the beach, in the forest, and so forth. And he says, Brett, the first time you guys ever sent me a video of you guys training, immediately I could see straight away what your lineage is, where you guys come from. Raw, unadulterated Kempo in Africa. And he said, I could see, I didn't need to know your instructor. I could feel him through you, and that meant so much to me, that somebody that didn't know Shian Brian could actually honor him so much, and it's like Tank. I'm sure you've seen Tank. He trains with Tank, who's challenged in certain aspects, one of his students. Tank's got challenges, but man, he's so patient with that student. He trained with him on Mother's Day. He'll go and get him out of situations and get him back on track. And Tank will call him at 4 a.m. and he can't sleep. And he says, I want to train. And Manny will go down and meet with him. The keyboard warriors, the critics out there, don't see that. They only see Manny types something and says something about somebody which is possibly even true. But they don't see all the other things that Manny does in the background. And that, for me, that's sad, but I know that and I see that. And that's why I've had people contact me and say, Shian Brett, why are you with Manny? He's going to bring you down. He's going to taint your name. You were invited to the States by Chuck Sullivan and Vic LaRue. Why would you want to be involved with this guy? Well, because I know the whole Manny, not just what the guys see when he's taking on someone on social media. I see all the aspects of him. And the net result is a man that I want to be associated with. And yes, true brothers, iron sharpens iron. True brothers are there for each other. I've got my faults and weaknesses. I would like to think that Ridor and Jamil will say, hey, Shian Brett, that's not cool. That's not right, which we've done over the last 40-odd years. And I think that's what a lot of the very astute instructors within the IKKS, and let me tell you, some of the guys that are part of the IKKS have got thoroughbred lineage. They are proper, and they are definitely encouraging Manny, and I think Manny is becoming a better version of himself over time, He needed to exercise some demons. He needed to get some stuff off his chest, and I respect that. But I know that will become less, and focusing on the IKKS and our development will become more. But if the IKKS gets attacked, if the attack comes to us, I've gone on social media and I've taken some guys on diplomatically. I've taken them on. If you come in and you bring it to us and you attack us, and I feel it's unjustified or your information is inaccurate, I'm going to respond. Obviously, I'll have a different way of doing it, but I will. I just won't go out and look for it. But if I see it and it comes to me and it's on social media, I'll take it on. So, yeah. Over to you, Reggie.
Yeah, no, that's totally understandable, and just like we kind of talked about before, having that family, that connection, that bond is important, and wherever you find it, just like with anything, there's different sides, there's different perspectives and things like that, and what working with one person or one organization or whatever it is that may be right for you, may not be right for me, or may not be right for the next person. And just like it is with Kempo, it has to be kind of tailored and modified to fit the individual, it works the same with organizations and training partners and teachers and all those things, that you have to find that aspect that fits you, and
100%.
you can make it to something good, you can make it to something bad, and there's everything in between, and different sides and different perspectives. So it's everyone's journey is different, and we get from point A to point B on different paths and different roads, and that's just life, and that's just how it goes. So we go on the journey that we need to go, and things go the way that they need to go. So I can respect that.
Yeah.
So to kind of take it back to your journey, when did the teaching aspect get into it? When did you start the teaching, and was it something that you were always interested in, or was it thrust upon you? How did that go?
I think growing as a junior black belt growing up, we were always in class. We were always assisting those in the belts below us. So if we were in a class and it's like really busy, Shem Brian would ask us to assist with the younger kids. Usually 2 or 3 belt levels below you would assist. Once you got your junior black at 16, you were given a bit more responsibility in terms of taking younger students while they focused on while he focused on the older ones. So there was a bit of cross training, and then at 18 you got your senior black. And I was always within the dojo environment was sort of assisting with teaching, as I progressed with my own journey. In 1992 was when I entered into the security industry. I was 21, 22 years old, entered into security, and I was working security in the clubs, in the entertainment world within South Africa. As you know, this country is. You just got to go look at go Google, go look at the rankings. Most dangerous cities in the world. We have a lot of gangs here. We have a lot of tribal, intertribal issues. We have hijackings. We have murders. I think we have the highest murder rate in the world. So it's pretty rough. We have beautiful parts of the country, beautiful parts of Cape Town. I mean, we win tourist awards all the time. We break records for them. Tourists coming every year, so it's quite a contrast. You have a lot of beauty and natural beauty and very developed first world city, but there's a dark side to it too. And in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, working in the clubs and etc., we had to often brush with the underworld and gangs and stuff like that, and life-threatening situations. And I had my own school out close to where I lived in an area called Bergfleet. I had my own school, and my students have always been traditionally. I can show you photographs. I mean, 80 to 90% of my students have been non-white students, and I taught in gangster areas. I've taught in schools, in sort of gang areas, and a lot of those students have gone on today to become captains of industry, very successful business people. And even when I was teaching in those schools, I would have the teachers or principals come to me and say, we can see which students are doing karate in the school. They carry themselves in a different way. They conduct themselves in a different way. Their level of respect with their peers and their teachers. He said, we can just see it. We see it in the academics, And for me, that was the greatest reward. Not just about teaching and imparting skills, but to develop the inner person to to become a more disciplined. We teach discipline, obviously, in a dojo in terms of respect and etiquette and protocols, but that carries through into their adult life if you've done a good job as an instructor. And a lot of those students I know today, 30, 40 years later, they're married with children. Their children are doing karate. Maybe not Kempo, they could be doing other styles, but those people always on social media, they like my posts, they reach out to me every now and again, they'll look at my WhatsApp status, just congratulate me on a birthday or a wedding or whatever it is. And then you know you've done something right. It wasn't always just about the karate, it was about the whole package. That's what a true instructor is. He doesn't just teach his students a technique and it sends them home. But that also comes with its challenges. You know, I've was married to my first wife from 2003 to 2016, and I had a school in an area called Durbanville in Cape Town, more of an affluent area, but my students were pretty mixed. And my dojo partner, my assistant instructor, was a guy called Timothy Lotter. He was a man of color, but he was, man, I tell you, he was a fighter. You know, if these guys on social media that have a lot to say, if Timothy was challenged, oh, I've seen a lot of this, meet me at the dojo, meet me, I want to come there. If they had to say that to Timothy, he'd say, what time? I'm there today. Let's not wait for sunset. And he would go toe to toe. That guy was, yeah. And he had his own security company as well. And that's ultimately what led to his demise. He was taking on the gang elements in Cape Town, keeping them out of his clients' venues and so forth. Unbelievable self-belief. Very driven, very confident man. And unfortunately, 6 years ago, he was coming from the airport in Cape Town on a Sunday, and a vehicle pulled up next to him. A BMW pulled up next to his 4x4, and they shot him through the driver's side door of his vehicle with a high caliber weapon. I counted 9 shots through the door, but you know, he got hit in his torso. He got hit in his torso, no headshots in the torso. Do you know that even under fire, he pulled his firearm, fired back at them. There was a hospital nearby, so he was bleeding, but he drove to try and get to the hospital. And he actually killed one of his attackers, and there was 4 of them. But then he lost consciousness through blood loss. He hit an island traffic circle. His vehicle stalled. And then the one guy got out the vehicle, walked up to his vehicle, and just finished him off, you know. But he managed to fight back even in facing death. That was his character to the end. That was who he was. And after he passed, you know, he passed around the time that I was getting divorced. There was a lot going on in my life. So I kind of slowed things down a bit. You know, I focused more on my career. I'm in security myself at my own company, Close Protect International. So I specialize in close protection. I work with diplomats. I work with entertainers, top actors and singers and so forth, corporates. And of course, within our demographic here, I work with our city. We go into very high-risk areas every day into the townships where there's deaths daily, you know, murders and so forth. So I basically face those challenges daily in my life. And I see these guys fighting on social media saying, I want to fight, I want to get in the dojo and whatever. Man, let me tell you, I laugh at that, because if these guys knew what my dojo looked like, my dojo is going into war zones daily. And I leave my house. I'm married for the second time now for 10 years. My youngest is 7. I have a stepson of 12. My daughter's in her final year of school. She's 18, and I have a son of 22. But when I leave my house every day, I face the reality of not coming home, you know, because of the places that I go into, and I've lost colleagues, you know. I've lost colleagues that were parked next to me in these red zones. So when you've experienced enough of that, you just don't have time for all this other nonsense. I've done my fair share of fighting, like I said, working in the clubs and so forth, and challenged. South Africa's got big men. I'm quite big, but you've seen our rugby players, guys that are like over 2 meters tall, 140 kilos. That would be 300 pounds, but they can run 100 meters in like 11 seconds. These are monsters.
Oh yeah.
We've got a lot of them here, and they come into the pubs and they're like, oh, and you there, they stand over here. You know what I mean? You think you're big, and they're monsters. And when they're drunk, they'll pull the tow bar off your car. So
Gotcha.
When some guy on the internet says you want to fight, I'm like,
yeah.
Also, I've got to be very careful because in this country, having a security license, having business security weapons, and so forth, assault is a very serious thing. You hit somebody and they lay a charge, you could lose your license, your business, your career is over. So I've got to be kind of careful. Get them to sign something beforehand.
Yeah, that's something that I don't think martial artists think about enough. I mean, we of course want to work on our techniques and our forms and all these different things, and we build these scenarios of how we can protect ourselves and that sort of thing, which actually has me thinking about a question that I'm gonna ask here in just a moment. But we build these ideas of okay, well, this guy is going to try and rob us, and we're going to defend ourselves and do all these things. But the part that I think doesn't get talked about enough or thought about enough is the legal side of it. You hit somebody in the face and they fall down and smash their head on the ground and they die. That's it. There's you can't just say, oh, well, it was self-defense and that sort of thing. I mean, or even if, I guess, let me even take it to they're not trying to rob you. You just, oh, well, they bumped you in the street and then you started arguing and you punched them in the face and they fall down and hit their head and that sort of thing. There's that legal side of it about what we can do, and for those of us that carry knives and guns and whatever other weapons and stuff like that, it's like, yeah, it would be nice to be able to pull out my knife and do whatever great technique and something like that, but there's the legal ramifications of stabbing someone, and that side of it doesn't get talked about enough. So yeah, you have to know about that. So going into the thing that I was thinking about is we, at least very much in America, it's not, we have our violent areas and whatnot, but I think it would be safe to say that there's less violence here in America than there is in South Africa, and what I'm curious about is kind of how are martial arts viewed there through the lens of there's more of a likelihood that you're going to have to use your martial arts training there than I would say somewhere here in America. I think there's probably less of a focus or less of a belief that you're going to have to use your skills. We train because we want to be able to know that we can use our skills, but I think I think most of us kind of think that I know that I can take care of myself, but I probably won't have to, and it's my assumption that it's more likely you're going to have to use your skills out there where you're at. So just kind of what is maybe your perspective or kind of the general public's perspective of martial arts out where you're at?
Look, in the South African context, a lot of the security operatives here have either got a military or police background, any of them, and or martial arts background. And in fact, in some instances, security companies actually bring in karate and jiu-jitsu and etc. They bring them in to their companies and get them to do training with their staff. And it's almost like a prerequisite. It's like, South Africa, as you know, I can imagine, is it's a very gun conscious country. I mean, I don't go to the shop without carrying. Wherever I go, when I got married to my second wife, I'd go to the shop for milk, and she'll see me carry like appendix inside carry conceal, and she'll say, "Where are you going? Are you going to work now?" I said, "No, I'm going to the shop." "Why are you carrying your firearm?" I said, "What do you mean? Crime finds you where you are." And me being in the industry for so long and having the reputation that I have, if I must ever succumb, one of the first things that the guys are going to ask is like, "Hey, was Brett? Brett got shot today. Brett died. Was he carrying?" Because that's the first thing they're going to want to think of. No, did I at least attempt to fight back? Did I shoot back? And they'll say, no, he didn't have his firearm with him. That would be like sacrilege, But I don't do it for that reason. I do it for the fact that, you're just so security conscious when you're working in the security. Sorry, has my contrast gone down on the phone?
No, you
because
look fine.
I see I'm on 5%, but I can't get my son to bring me my lead if needs be. But
no problem.
We just have such varied crime in the country, that you can go to the shop, you can go visit a friend. I mean, the minute you're on the road and you're in the public, there's a chance that something could happen, hijacking, attempted robbery, whatever the case. So, and when you're in the security industry, you're so security conscious that I constantly, because I have to do that with my clients, I've got to constantly think like a criminal, that, yeah, if I go out without a firearm, it would be almost like, well, would you do that with your client? Would you travel with your client from the hotel to the airport and not have your firearm? No, you would be armed. So it's kind of like leaving your house with I don't know, with your keys or something. It's an appendage for me. In South Africa, in terms of the martial arts, if I, for instance, was to assault somebody, because you just Google me, you'll find me. And the thing is, they will say, and it's happened historically, where I've been in situations, I've used my skills, and in cases, I've never got a criminal record, I've never had anything pinned on me, but I've used my skills. A person's got like hospitalized and so forth, but it was warranted. But the fact that you've got a martial arts background, that investigating officer will say, "Oh, but aren't you a karate instructor?" And I'll be like, "Yes." But how does that change the fact that if I was an accountant and I'm being attacked or I'm being threatened, how does it change? Being a karate instructor doesn't mean that you're less of a victim. It just means you know how to handle that situation. And when I was younger, things were a lot more liberal in this country, as you can imagine. Certainly before 94 and before like 2000, you could get away with a lot more. I mean, and I worked in security. I mean, I'm not proud to admit it, but there were times when when you're young, your testosterone, your ego, you want to show people. If someone challenged you, you say, "Well, now I've got to kind of show face." And you don't just neutralize the situation. You really make an example, and and some guys got pretty hurt. And looking back at it now as an adult of nearly 56, a father of 4, I have some regrets. I look back and say, some of the guys that I taught a lesson. It wasn't necessary to go that far. It wasn't necessary sometimes to maybe even use force. As you grow as a person, like Bruce Lee would say, the best form of defense is not having to fight in the first place. And walking away from a fight is not a weakness. South African men are very bravado. If you walk away, you're a chicken, you this, you that. And that's what I try and put across today, because in my situation in security, we try and avoid situations. Just because we're armed and we've got like 6 bodyguards and we've got all the weaponry, we don't go driving through the obvious point to say, come on, here we are, come and look for us. No, we still navigate. We still plan the safest route. We always plan that we don't have to fire one shot. You don't, just because you have it, go out there and say, well, here I am, come and find me. So I've been challenged even this year. And when you sort of don't take the bait, it's almost like, oh, you're chicken, you're scared, you don't have it anymore. And I'm thinking, man, let me tell you something. A thrust to the throat, a V thrust to the throat. Even though I'm 56 and I'm executing that technique, it's going to hit you like a 20-year-old. It's no difference. In fact, probably worse. So never judge a martial artist by his age and say you're over the hill, whatever the case. We all know when we experience, we know what the vitals are. We know how to strike them. I mean, I remember going over to this, when I went to the States, I trained a bit with Vic, and Vic is much older than me. And I mean, that guy moved like somebody 20, 30 years younger than him. And with his knowledge, and I often thought to myself, man, if some 20-year-old is snot nose to come up to him in a pub and challenge him, he'd be able to finish them, even though he's like 70. So don't underestimate the old man or veteran, unless he's got physical limitations.
Okay, so once again, seamless editing. No one will ever know that we had any kind of technical difficulties. So we're kind of back at it here. The kind of last thought that I had on what you were talking about, I'm going to kind of date myself here a little bit in that I was reminded of a movie called The Presidio. Came out, I guess it was sometime in the 80s, and one of the stars of the movie was Sean Connery, and there was a scene. It's. My memory is not super great, but essentially there was this cop that was investigating a murder, and he had to work with this military guy that's the character that Sean Connery was playing. And there's a scene in the movie where they're in a bar or something, and they're having to deal with this guy, and the guy is seeing Sean Connery and realizing that he's a older gentleman, and he's thinking, oh well, I can beat this guy up, I can take this guy out. And Sean Connery says something to the effect of, oh well, I can take you out, and all I need is my thumb. And of course the younger guy is scoffs at that idea, and sure enough, Sean Connery's character just kind of jabs him in the throat with his with his thumb, and takes the guy down. And it's just like, you can't judge a book by its cover. It doesn't matter how big and strong you are, but you take out somebody's knee, or you poke them in the throat, or you poke them in the eyes, or something like that, they're going down. So I like that. So
awesome.
So yeah, it's called The Presidio. It's an older movie, but it's a fun watch if I remember correctly.
Did you take it to? Sorry.
So,
I was in the little break we had, I was making pancakes for the boys, that at home because of the weather. And I asked my youngest to make his brother one, but he broke it. So when I'm done, yeah, I'll sort them out.
Gotcha. Yeah, been there, been been on that as well. Yeah. So we're actually close to, well, like I mentioned with just about all of my guests. There's so many things that that I'd love to get into, but we don't have the time to get into every single thing. So we'll definitely have to do part 2 and 3 and 4 and all of that to get into other parts of your story. But we're going to go ahead and move into what I call the lightning round of our episode. I just have a few little questions here for you as we head towards closing out our time for today. So
Yeah.
the very first question being, do you have a favorite technique?
I think, the classic one, we all Kempo practitioners sort of harp on 5 swords. But yeah, I think five swords is a classic, because it sort of uses a lot of the quadrants, and it's a sort of multifaceted technique. It's not a 1, 2, 3. It's got multiple components to it, and not very many of the techniques, as you well know, have that many linkages to them. They're very kind of like, neutralize, counter, finish, and that one kind of tends to go on a bit. So I think it's one that we all tend to use, but as a favorite. But what I like is what we used to refer to in the ICAC as escaping ram, which is it's a rear bear hug. Someone comes from behind, puts their arms around you. Your arms are pinned like this. My father passed away recently on the 31st of March. He was 3 days short of his 88th birthday. So, he was diagnosed with brain and lung cancer. And I was very fortunate. He was living very far from me, but he came back to Cape Town because he was having seizures. And then discovered he had brain cancer, then lung cancer. And then within 8 days, he was gone, but he was almost 88. But at his memorial service, which took place on his birthday, which was the 3rd of April. So he died on the 31st of March, and his service was on the 3rd of April on his birthday. My nephew, who's a rugby player, who's about 6'6", big guy, we were joking about a group of us were standing around like guys do. And, I don't know how we even got onto the topic of fighting and karate and whatever. And I showed him the escaping ram technique, because I think he asked me, he said, what would you do if I came behind you and I grabbed you in a pub, because I'm his uncle, and he's like 20 years old, but he's big, taller than me. And I said, well, let me show you. And all the other family was sitting around having tea and cake and whatever the case. And some of the guys were standing around, and he took me around my arms. And the technique, like you headbutt, and then you push your butt into your opponent, and you open your arms up. So you flare their arms, and then you take a transitional step, look over your shoulder, and you do a kick to the solar plexus. But that motion, that sort of headbutt, headbutt to the back, and then pushing your buttocks into your opponent. So it's that kind of wavering action, and then opening the arms. As I did that, I thought I was doing it quite controlled, but I didn't do the headbutt, obviously, but I went into that direction. And as I came forward and I pushed my butt into him and I opened my arms, I actually connected him in his groin area. And he went down to the ground. He was like, oh, and I actually thought he was joking. And I was like, oh, come on. And he said, no, it's okay, I'm okay. And I said, did I hurt you? And he said, oh, you hit me in my nuts. And I was like, oh, wow. And it was just, I thought I was doing it mild, and he's a big guy. And even though it was funny, and he said, well, it works. It really works. I said, but my boy, I wasn't even using proper force. Imagine if I really went for it. He said, no, I would have been on the ground for like a while. And what I took away from that experience was that here was my nephew, who's like 6'6", is a rugby player, big, strong young boy. And I'm playing around. I'm trying to show him escaping ram, a rear bear hug technique. And I hit him in his buttocks. In his groin area with my buttocks. And he actually went down. And the other guys that were standing around were like, because they could see he wasn't acting. And he was bigger than all of us. And they were like, okay, sure, this shit works. I said, well, and I came away from that experience today thinking to myself, when we do techniques, as you know, it's always very so controlled. And there's a lot of criticism on social media of how the person stands there and you can do what you want to do. And how realistic is it? And in fact, today there was some chat on the group or some of the groups, this guy's not just going to stand there. And here I was doing a technique where I wasn't certainly not intending to hurt my nephew, but he actually dropped to his knees, and he's a big guy. And I thought to myself, okay, so yeah, we were talking about favorite techniques. I mean, that would definitely be one, because in a situation, in a pub or a club or something, or a social place, other than being attacked from the front, you could have somebody trying to grab you from the rear. They'll try and pin you in your arms. And I mean, even a woman, we used to do a lot of self-defense classes for elderly and for females, because they're not, percentage-wise, you're not going to get a lot of older people joining a dojo, and you're not going to necessarily always get females. They'll go to Pilates and Tai Chi and that kind of thing. It's not a big percentage of women versus males, I think, doing karate. I don't know the exact stat, but I would think there's more male-dominated sport. So women don't but they'll do self-defense classes. So you've got to kind of take your knowledge, your syllabus, and say, okay, let's sort of narrow it down to what sort of techniques would a woman primarily, because you can't teach them unless they're coming into a school traditionally going through the ranks. But if you're going to teach an elderly person or a female, like your system or your style, but what they're going to use on the street, you'd have to condense it and think of what kind of attacks would more commonly take place on a female. What would a man want to do if he wants to maybe assault a female or even rape her, and what sort of techniques? So escaping ram, would definitely be one of them. Guy grabbing a woman from behind and trying to get into a dark corner or something. Guys, sorry. Can you hear them in the background?
Not a problem. Not a problem. Not a problem. Sounds good. I like it. All right. Next question. Do you have a favorite form and or set?
Do you have a favorite? Flo?
Yes.
Or
favorite
set?
Form or set?
Form or set?
And or set.
Well, I'm very biased in that regard, because when we moved over to the IKCA, Chuck Sullivan and Vic LaRue, they basically took all their Kempo knowledge, which was traditionally IKKA system, and they kind of felt there were too many techniques. And if you get on the street, I can't go like through this repertoire thinking, oh, the guy's attacking me like this now, what am I going to use? So, we call it analysis paralysis, So what the IKCA did is they kind of took the IKKA syllabus, essentially all their knowledge. And Chuck was, Ed Parker's fourth black belt, if I'm not mistaken, fourth black belt. And he's like 92 or 94 now. I think he's the most senior still living. And he condensed it. The IKCA system back then, I believe it's 60 techniques now, but it was 55 when they originally started the IKCA. And those 55 techniques, on every belt level, you do the techniques, and that becomes the form. So if you're doing orange, you'd have 6 techniques, and purple would be 7, and so it goes. And black belt would be 15. So, and then those techniques knit and form the master form. So in terms of, to me, the master form, the IKCA master form, is for me the most comprehensive. It deals with all the angles, front, back, the sides, the various angles of attack. And if you master that, you pretty much got a very comprehensive system. Obviously, the segments to break it down, I can't really say what is my favorite, because even at the lower belt levels, some of the techniques I find are more appealing to me than even some of the sort of more senior belt techniques. So they kind of, you could take your favorites out of the different levels, but those forms are done per belt level, and I can't really say to you that I prefer any one belt level over another, but then they all encompass and become one knitted form, which is your nearly 3-minute long master form. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
no, that's perfect answer. That's perfect answer. And so yeah, I like it. All right. Next question. Do you have a favorite weapon?
The Kalis. The Kali, the extended sticks, bamboo, whatever you want to call them, traditionally bamboo. But the Kali for me is just it's an extended nunchaka, essentially, in terms of its design, and it just doesn't have a connected cord or anything. And why I like the Kalis is because it's an extension of you, it's an extension of your arms. So, for instance, if you take any technique, I used to play around with the Karate Connection syllabus with Kalis and take the techniques and then, kind of adapt the technique to the weapon. So if you have a double block and then a strike to the neck and then a counter strike, I would the double block would essentially be the Kali's blocking, then it will be a strike with the Kali to the neck, and then an overhead strike to the head. So you essentially just using the Kalis as an extension of your arms and incorporating that into the technique. For me, why I like the Kalis is because if you're in a setting, to find, especially if you're being cornered by a group of guys, for instance, it's probably a lot easier to find something that resembles a stick or a plank or a baton in most environments, as opposed to an actual weapon. If there's not a set of nunchakas lying there, or a knife, if you don't have a knife on your person, suppose if you're in a kitchen, close to a kitchen, or in a recreational place, you could find a knife, but it's probably a butter knife. You're going to have to be very fortunate to grab a steak knife. Be very, very unfortunate if you grabbed a knife and it was a butter knife. You can't really do much of that. But the Kalis are, if you're remotely somewhere, for instance, and you need to protect yourself against something, let's say you're on holiday and you're at a house and you hear something outside, you don't have a gun or you don't have knives, but you probably would. But I'm just saying, if you're limited, you could take a broomstick and break it, and all of a sudden you've got 2 Kalis. So for me, that's the simplest, easiest accessed weapon outside of more defined weaponry. And because of what we do in terms of techniques and forms and katas, it's the most natural one to utilize within the transference of that technique into a weapon kata, for instance. It's just an extension of your hands. And I have insecurity. You probably have it in the States as well. You have your traditional baton that the police have. They have like batons. But then you have the ones that sort of like, you get the metal ones that come sort of out and then they fold up into a short little thing like that. And there was a stage in my life when I used to have two of those in each pocket. So if I'm doing security at a venue or I'm at a function, whatever, I'd have them in my pockets and it would be so unassuming. Got a blazer jacket on or jacket, you look so And if there's a situation, especially, a really challenging situation that you're outnumbered, I mean, you could just pull those out before you know it. You've got two extended batons or kalis in your hand. And so it's a weapon that can be also very easily disguised. Obviously, if it's that particular weapon that can extend and etc. I'm talking more from a security point of view now. You can conceal that, walk with your client, and your client won't even know you have it. But if a situation arises that's very, very challenging, all of a sudden you've got these two extended batons in your arm and in your hand, should I say, and you can utilize them. I know a lot of guys would say their favorite weapon is a knife. That's for obvious reasons. But like I say, my bias always comes in. I mean, I've obviously done knife fighting, a screamer, and in South Africa we have what's called piper. I'm sure you've heard of that. Piper knife fighting. Our Cape gangsters are incredible with knives. A lot of our gangs, and in their prisons here, they use knives extensively. And the piper fighting system is trained worldwide now. It's basically a Cape gang knife fighting system that's been developed over decades. It's actually now been formalized and utilized in training. Our Cape gangsters in Cape Town here are known to be among the best knife fighters in the world. But if you pull a knife, the chances are you are going to more likely that you're going to end up harming somebody, killing somebody. I mean, even with a gun, you can fire a warning shot. You can shoot somebody in the shoulder or the leg, and you can just, and a gun makes a lot of noise. And if you shoot an attacker with a round into his leg or his shoulder, you're going to neutralize him. But with a knife, it's very different. You stab someone, they don't even know they've been stabbed sometimes. The adrenaline's pumping. And I just feel knife fights often end up in fatalities because it's multiple stabs. I mean, here in Cape Town, we have gangsters that stab somebody like 17 times before they stop. But what are the chances of you shooting somebody 17 times? Unless you're like a crazy man. It's normally 1 or 2 rounds, and the person could possibly be injured and survive. But if you got a knife, I don't know. I sometimes think a knife is more dangerous than a gun.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Very nice. Very nice. All right. We're going to move to our next question. If there is anyone that you could train with, living or dead, fictional or non-fictional, besides Zed Parker, who would that be?
Good question. When I was in America in 2011, I had the privilege of training with Frank Correia, Dan Inisanto, Mike Pick, Dan Hebler, among others. There was a lot of grandmasters at that event, and I was fortunate to interact with them and train with them. But I think it's going to sound really, really cliched, but I'm going to say Bruce Lee, and I'll tell you why. Because I know he attracts a lot of criticism. What's new? The martial arts industry likes to critique.
That never happens.
but Bruce Lee for me, because before I even started with Shia and Brown in 1979, I saw Bruce Lee Enter the Dragon, and I had these underpants with these little karate characters on this Chinese writing. And when I wore those underpants, I always felt like I was invincible. And I kind of wanted to wear them every day, but that wasn't possible. But Bruce Lee, I think a lot of where karate comes from emanates from Bruce Lee. I know a lot of it is Japanese, of course, Okinawa, Goju Kai, and Kaikushin, and all those styles. But I think Bruce Lee, a lot of what has developed over the last 40 years has emanated from him and from Jeet Kune Do. And here's his mind, he's mastering of the anatomy, physiology, and his philosophies and his discipline. You know, yeah, I think you could have learned so much from him because he was an all-encompassing martial artist. You know, and he took his knowledge from Yip Man, from the Wing Chun and whatever else he learned, and he kind of developed his own system. You know, and he was really in the pursuance of perfection. If you saw what he looked like in his younger years, he was quite a tubby. He was quite a, you know, he didn't have a physique like he did. And he was, you know, and if you look at what he progressed to physically, you know, that took a heck of a lot of training, a lot of discipline, a lot of knowledge as well, science. So I think definitely Bruce Lee. Yeah.
That's great answer. Yeah, no, a number of guests have mentioned him, and his influence on the martial arts is undeniable, and yeah, he's inspired many of us to train, and that perfectly leads into my next and last question is, what is something that motivates you to train, and or something that you'd like to put out to motivate others to train? So I use the example of the movie Rocky IV, when he's out there doing the training, he's running through the snow and chopping the wood and all that sort of things. Anytime I watch that scene, I'm ready to get out and get to training, and so that always fires me up. So what is something like that for you, or something that you want to put out for others to motivate them?
You know, if you had asked me that question, I think that question can be answered differently at different stages in your life. But I think for me, it's nearly 56. Let me answer that question twofold. When I was younger, it was quite simple. It was a matter of developing a skill set so that I could survive, so that I could fend off older boys attacking me, beating me up in the orphanage. It was quite simple. And then as I went into my 20s, it was working in the security industry and having to use my skills, often in unarmed combat, so to speak, and protecting my clients, protecting patrons, sometimes protecting myself. And so I've always been in the pursuance of knowledge. I've never ever, and I will never have the attitude of, well, you know, I'm 47 years in the martial arts. I'm about to receive my 6th degree, so I'm there. I'm all that. Never. If a true martial artist, if he's true to himself, will always be humble and be open to learning, growing, and never becoming linear or one-dimensional. I mean, even Ed Parker said he has his amazing system back in 1990, you know, and he never ever said, I have the complete system and I don't ever want it tampered and touched. If you do that, I'm going to be upset. In fact, he was quite the opposite. You know, he wanted the perpetuation, the evolution of the system. And as martial artists, we should have that same attitude, that we need to adapt. Like in the in the UFC, how many of those fighters don't go and train in? They always make the joke: go to Dakistan, go train with Khabib and those guys. We've got a fighter in the UFC, Dricus du Plessis. He was the middleweight champion. Then he lost to Khamzat. We just lost to Strickland, but Dricus was unbeaten. He was unbeaten. And Khamzat couldn't beat him standing up because Dricus was too strong in the stand-up. Dricus knew. The minute Khamzat tried to stand up, Dricus just knocked him. And then I think his team must have indicated him and said, don't do that. This guy's going to kill you. So he took him to the ground. And for 5 rounds, he basically kept him on the ground. And there was criticism. Everybody said, but you know, that's not how you fight and whatever. But he won. He got the title from Du Plessis. So he used his skill set to his advantage, and Drickers underestimated him. The point I'm trying to make is that you must never limit yourself by being linear, by saying, well, I know everything, and I can take on anyone, like you in the opening of the meeting, you expressed how many different arts you've done. I've done basically Kempo all my life. I've done a little bit of training in Aikido. I've done some boxing. I've done a little bit of judo, but not formally, not in a ranking system. Just through my work, being exposed to different martial artists. My ex-partner, business partner, showed me some jiu-jitsu stuff, but in terms of moving with the times, almost all the fighters in the UFC would have at some point have done some sort of wrestling and some sort of jiu-jitsu, no matter where they come from. And even when Duplessis lost to Hamzat, the criticism on social media was, you need to go to Dagestan or you need to go to Russia or wherever, and you need to go and learn some more groundwork, because he was excellent in stand-up. So even though he was unbeaten and this was his first loss, there was a weakness in his martial art. But if he had the arrogance to say, no, I only lost one fight, I'm going to go my next fight, I'll do the same. No, he's intentionally gone now and worked on his weaknesses, and that's what we as martial artists need to do. If you are a purist and you want to stay within your own system, that's fine. But be open-minded to go beg, borrow, and steal, and take other positives from other styles, add it into your repertoire, or take your own system like Manny's doing. I know he's getting a lot of criticism. Maybe it's just the way he's going about, I don't know, but Manny's heart, his intention is to take Kempo, what he knows, and to try and adapt it into a modern era. If you look at his fight history and all his detractors, I must say the common denominator there is they say, yeah, he's got a fight history. So many can sort of back it up with actual history and fighting. And he's done MMA and he's done boxing and he's done karate. So he's trying to combine all his experience and knowledge into a revised system. And I don't think one should ever say that the system that you're improving is crappy, because that's disrespectful. Just say, I have a base system. It's my traditional system, but I'm putting add-ons. I'm incorporating other aspects to it to make myself a more complete martial artist.
Very good. Very good. I like it. All right. So we are now at our final piece of business today, and that is the shameless self-promotion. So feel free to plug anything that you'd like, or if there's anything that we haven't covered that you wanted to say, you now have the floor, and then we will close out our time for today from there.
Awesome. I just want to, first of all, before I do that, I want to thank you for your time and all the technical challenges we had today. You're an incredibly patient man, very pleasant personality. First time I've met you, but you're a great guy. And I just want to say that in terms of the IKKS, I've been appointed as the Vice President International by Manny. And from my side, all I can say to the martial arts world at large is I'm accessible. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I've got my own group, Kempo Karate South Africa. I've got about 3,100 members there. You guys can reach out to me if you want to ask any questions. I'll do my best to answer you openly, honestly, and diligently. I have affiliated to the IKKS, and what I can tell you is that we do not hand out certificates. Okay, we've membership certificates. If you join us as an organization, you'll get a membership certificate. In terms of recognizing your current rank, if we can verify your certifications, And we now have a panel that actually does that. It's not just the president. We've come alongside him and said, let us help you in that regard. So it's a lot for one person to process. If somebody comes to us and they have a certain rank and they want to have an equivalent rank with the IKKS, we will verify their certifications with the issuing entities and make sure that everything is above board before we issue a rank certificate. Only 3 people have received rank since the IKKS was formed, and we can explain every one of those. And in terms of promoting, we will have our own promotion criteria. Manny Reyes is working. He does have a beginner, an intermediate, an advanced, and a black belt syllabus. So there are 4 primary syllabuses that we'll have for the IKKS. So that's been, he's opened that up to the senior leadership within the organization, and we are busy working on the process of refining that syllabus before we make it officially available to our members. So there will be an official IKKS 4-level syllabus, which will be pretty much like what the IKCA did with the Kemper syllabus, and refining it into a sort of a sharp, concise sequence of syllabus. So we will be doing the same. But I don't want the perception out there that we're just handing out stuff left, right, and center, because it's really not. And if anybody has any doubts or questions about that, please, engage with me. But I will ask for evidence. I don't want hearsay and rumors, and none of us have got time for that. Let's deal with facts. Let's deal with real things. And if we've got to take things up with the leadership, go back to the president, whatever, we'll do that. I have my own security company. It's called Close Protect International, KPI. It's www.closepi.org. Close spelled with a K. KLOSE. pi.org, closepi.org. So anybody that might see this in the future that has a need for security, if they're coming to South Africa, they can get in contact with me, and we can arrange close protection for them if they're coming here as tourists or business on business or whatever the case might be. And you can go to my website as well. I think that's. And if anybody wants to join the IKKS, they can certainly reach out to me. I'll explain to them what we offer, what we're about, and then I can introduce them to Manny, and we can take it from there.
Very nice, very nice. Well, I thank you so much for taking the time to be on and sharing your story. And this has been a pleasure to speak with you. And I also applaud your patience in our technical difficulties. But we got it worked out and got everything out there. So you, of course, have an invitation to be on at any point, and we'll definitely have to do this again. But yes, once again, I thank you for being on and sharing your story, and I look forward to getting this out for the listeners and viewers to check out. And we will keep in touch and just keep going through the journey together. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Reggie. Keep well, and we'll speak soon. Cheers, my brother. Bye.